Hello, everybody. This is BJ Shah, your National Director for BNI in the UAE. And today we are joined by Prem Mulani. Prem has been with BNI for as much as the organization has been around in this country, 17 years. We're going to complete this year. Prem joined our second chapter. He was actually the founding member of our second chapter, the Early Birds, and he's been with us ever since. He started his journey off as a member, rose through the ranks, served in all the leadership team roles that you can imagine, and then of course he stepped up to be a director consultant. He has supported a number of different chapters out there. He's very passionate about BNI, and today our topic is all around relationship building. One of our core values is building relationships, and this year's theme for BNI globally is really how can we work together and how can we work as a team. The campaign actually is better together. And Prem and I were talking a few weeks ago, and I know one of the things Prem is very passionate about is this whole subject of one-to-one. So welcome, Prem. It's great to have you with us today.
Hey, great. It's great to be on here, BJ, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, so one-to-ones is something that we get all of our members to start doing right from day one. In fact, just today I came back from a meeting where a core group was meeting, and they're all very excited to see the launch of their chapter. But I can already see them starting to do one-to-ones with each other. So before the referrals, before the business, it starts with those one-to-ones.
Yeah.
So just for the audience today, Prem, if we can just go with the basics. When we talk about one-to-ones in BNI, is it different than building a relationship with anybody else outside of BNI, your clients, your suppliers, your vendors? What's unique about one-to-ones within BNI?
Well, I mean, I think we've labeled it in BNI as a one-to-one. Most other networking groups, they've not really given it that label that this is a formal structure, and they haven't given that label. They haven't given it the structure, so to speak. But in essence, what we're doing in BNI, to perhaps a different, slightly unstructured format, it should be done in any case in any networking group. So whether we're doing it in BNI, we should also be doing it outside BNI. That's what I firmly believe in, because done correctly, this can be probably the most powerful tool we have as a member. That's really, yeah, I sincerely believe that. And unless we're actually doing BNI one-to-ones effectively, we're really doing a disservice to our fellow members, and we're doing a disservice to ourselves, because we're not going to be reaching those objectives that what brought us first to BNI. Everyone has a certain reason. Obviously, there's a lot of people are attracted to it by the potential business. And, by not doing effective one-to-ones, you're doing yourself a disservice. That's what I firmly believe.
Okay. So let's start with the objective of one-to-one. What is it, the main purpose behind, and it's not just one-to-one, right? You would imagine you do a series of one-to-ones with your fellow members.
Yeah.
So what is that objective? Let's start off with that.
Okay, so I think I read, maybe I remember where I read this, is that Ivan Meissner had said, when you give a referral to someone, you actually give a little bit of your reputation away. That is from Ivan Meissner, right? I don't know. I probably read.
Well, I think it's true, right? I mean, all of us can agree to that. Whenever you're recommending or referring somebody, yeah, we're actually putting our credibility on the line. We're putting our neck on the line. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. So when you give a good referral, it enhances your reputation. When you give a bad referral, it hurts your reputation. Now, a bad referral doesn't mean that the person who received it did a bad job. It could have just been that I have not understood that person's business well enough. I've referred them, and when that person calls them up, it's chalk and cheese, what the person's requirement is and what the person's actually able to provide. So that also is bad for our reputation. So it's important for us to be understanding each and every member who we're passing referrals to, that what they can do and what they can't do. That is very, very important. And, I mean, at the end of the day, the referral process only really works effectively when you know someone well, you like them, and most importantly, you trust them, because it's your neck on the line. Okay. So the whole premise that we have in BNI is build business through relationships, right? You build business through relationships. And how do you build the relationships? The relationships are built to a certain extent in the meetings, but then again, you're meeting a whole bunch of members. The relationships are built to a certain extent in socials as well, because that's a part of BNI as well. But to really dig deep, it's one-to-ones. That's really where that core foundation it comes in.
So are you saying, Prem, that when we go to our BNI meetings, and one of the important items on the agenda is doing those weekly presentations.
Yep.
So each week, each member is getting a chance to educate their fellow members on who they are, what they do, what they're looking for. Are you suggesting that itself may not be adequate, and one-to-ones are mandatory, or a prerequisite really to be able to give those effective referrals?
Well, you see, when you're giving that presentation, you're giving your 30 seconds pitch, you're doing your 6 minutes presentations, you're able to educate your general membership on a general basis. But for someone to be able to really understand your business, there needs to be a one-to-one discussion where they can ask questions. There has to be a certain amount of dialogue. That can't happen in that sort of forum where a person is just presenting. That's a one-way presentation. Here, you need to have the dialogue where the opposite person can actually answer any queries you have, say that, why is it that you want to target this market? What is it that you're able to do? And really dig deeper into the whole why. We've generally provided an overview in the presentations. Here, we get a chance to dig deep.
Yeah, that makes sense. So typically, how long would one then need to spend on these one-to-ones? Because we're all very busy. So if you're saying, hold on, these one-to-ones are relationship-building meetings, at the same time, how can you make sure that it's effective from a time management point of view? So roughly, what would you say would be how much time would be adequate to spend in these, number one? And secondly, can you structure these such that you actually make optimal use of time? And if so, how do you do that?
You see, now I think it's horses for courses. You have two types of members who have been perhaps members for only perhaps less than a year. You've got other members who have been more mature members who have been there 2, 3, 4, 5. We have members up all the way up to 16, 17 years, right? So it's the ones who are younger members as such, over there, it's a case of building the relationship. So the focus that tends to be there in the one-to-one is starting to understand each other. Someone who's been exposed to each other for a long time, I don't want to say it, but you can dispense with the niceties, right? You can go in and actually be focused on a result-oriented one-to-one. It's because you know each other about the family, you know each other about each other's general business, you know what your likes, dislikes are. Okay, it's a 5-minute catch up, and then go into the actual the hard business side. I'm not trying to be ruthless or transactional about it, but it's just that when I compare this to a business meeting. A one-to-one, we all have to remember at the end of the day is a business meeting, okay? When we go into a business meeting, we need to prepare, we need to expect results. When you go into any other business meeting outside of one-to-one, do we go in there not expecting results? We do, depending on the whole sales process. We're going in there perhaps to introduce ourselves, we're perhaps going in there for a pitch, whatever it may be, but we are expecting something along the whole sales process. In a certain way, I believe one-to-ones have to have that sort of progress as well in the sales process. This is your sales team who you're educating at the end of the day. Remember, we're going in and you're meeting your sales team one-to-one and trying to get to them to create opportunities for you.
So it's not necessarily how long you've been a member. I think it's more about how long you've been in a relationship with the other member. Because
Absolutely.
you could be a 10-year member,
Yeah.
and somebody new joins your chapter. With that specific person, both of you are just starting out.
Yeah.
So would it be fair to say that, especially for more senior members, they really need to be mindful in which phase they are with that specific member, because there are members coming in and out all the time.
Yeah.
So the example you just gave, where you already know each other, the credibility established, there's a certain level of trust already in. You can get down to business straight away, but for that to happen, you probably would have known each other for a while,
Absolutely.
as opposed to meeting somebody for the first time. Because one of the things I hear out there is, especially the younger or the newer members saying, either they're finding it difficult to get one-to-ones done with senior members. Not all, but some senior members sometimes are like, I'm done with this whole one-to-one thing. So they're comfortable amongst the members they already know, but they're probably not willing to get out of that comfort zone to start building new relationships. Do you see that happening out there? Because I hear many a times, from younger members, that these members are not just. What could be the reason for that? Is it because they don't see the value, they're not willing to put in the effort? What is your experience on the ground? Because of course, you've been a member, you continue to meet a lot of members on a regular basis.
I think really this is where we've lost out, in the sense that people haven't seen the value of the one-to-ones. They've done the one-to-ones for a period of time, a lot of time, and they haven't seen the value of the one-to-ones. And now they start feeling that, should I be really putting in that much time into the one-to-ones? There isn't a result. The damage has been done to a certain extent in their perception. And it's now going to take that slow reorientation process of getting them back in. I firmly believe that's the case, because I've seen too many one-to-ones are glorified coffee sessions, honestly. People, they're talking about each other.
That actually brings me to another point. I was thinking about this just before we were getting on this call. You've been long enough, and if you remember the times when we never had traffic lights and all of that, right?
Yeah.
We just had this. In fact, even when we had those paper slips, if I recall correctly, there were two paper slips that we had. One was when we had referrals.
Yes.
And the other one was when we just had to thank somebody for closed business.
Thank you for closed business.
We never had slips for one-to-ones. We didn't have slips for what we call CEUs, for the training.
Right.
Those were introduced later. So in those scenarios, and we didn't have the traffic light report. So thinking about it all the way back then, when people saw the value on why to do one-to-ones, it wasn't probably necessarily to fill out a slip and really just score any points. Now we do have that, and it's for sort of giving a measure to members and remind them where they are in that journey. Do you think that could be a factor as to why we probably lost the core as to why do one-to-ones, and then how to really do effective? I mean, how did you do your one-to-ones in the early days, and how do you do them today? Or rather, when you do them, with other members, do you see a difference in the way other members approach one-to-ones?
Yeah. Okay. Bunch of questions and bunch of answers over there. The early days, we were inspired to do one-to-ones because we wanted to basically get to know each other's business so that we could create opportunities for each other. There was no structure. It was simply the intent. The only benefit that we would get out of it is perhaps to create opportunities for each other. Now, we have the structure, which can or cannot be, sometimes is and isn't followed. But whether or not the business comes in, we're still seeing a benefit on our traffic light score. So somewhere along the lines are perhaps the intent gets muddied, so to speak, about why are we actually meeting. It was simpler earlier on. But at the end of the day, what happens is that when you set up new things, it has unintended consequences. And this, I guess, becomes an unintended consequence is that you actually have one-to-ones which aren't there for the purpose. And I think, BJ, again, I wonder if I'm quoting Ivan Meissner or whoever it is really with one-to-ones, is that, when you ask, if I ask you for a one-to-one, right? The purpose of the one-to-one is not how can BJ create referrals for me. When I'm asking BJ for a one-to-one to go and see him, I should be going there with the intent of how do I learn more about BJ's business to create more opportunities for BJ.
That's where the giver's game kicks in, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really, really important. So I think, so in the early years, our intent was the one-to-one was to create opportunities. Now, perhaps it's, it's a tick of the box of doing a one-to-one and getting the point.
So Prem, thank you for that. Share with us the ideal structure. And I know, again, we say that depending on where or which phase you're at with the different members. So, you have, I guess, all sorts of different members probably listening to this or reading this. So let's start with our new members, somebody who is just starting out their journey in BNI, who's just getting to know their fellow members. What would be the ideal structure for them to follow? And then let's move on after that to somebody who's probably slightly more deeper in that relationship. If it's different, what would be that different structure? If you can give us some tips and guidelines on what are the ideal structures to follow for these scenarios?
In the first part of the structure, BJ, is that every single member needs to have their meeting planner completely ready. Now, the meeting planner involves 4 parts. What people are aware of is the first sheet, which is a biodata sheet. Everyone should have had that from the day they got inducted. The second sheet
that shares the basic information about yourself, right?
The basic information, family, etc. So you got that. Second page has the gains. Okay, people need to have that filled out so that fellow members can understand you a bit more. It digs a little bit deeper into you as an individual. The third page for me, which is the money page, really is the contact spheres. And the fourth page is where people are comfortable, is about sharing your last 10 clients. These are the 4 pages. Yeah, okay. These are the 4 pages that are structured normally.
Okay, let's break that up. So the first one you say, biodata, that's quite straightforward. It has all your basic information about yourself, whatever you're willing to share to the other person. The gains profile, it's an acronym, right?
Right, that's for goals, achievements, interests, networks, skills. Yeah.
And very, very quickly, how does each of those help? So again, there's no business I see over here. You're not discussing things yet.
I think more than anything else, it's there you're getting an understanding of the person, what they're about. You've got a very, very brief idea from their biodata sheet that they shared. But here you're digging again a little bit more about understanding who that person is, where they're coming from, where do they want to go. Some people put a lot of effort in their gains profile, some don't put in that much. But you get a feel of what that person's about. And you know what? Things like people mentioning that they like going off-roading, people mentioning that they are part of XYZ network. All this comes up in that second sheet, that gains sheet. And you never know when you have certain overlaps, certain things which really gel well with each other. And that, again, further deepens the relationship.
So I think from what you're saying, the gains sheet, that probably, in my opinion, if it's done right, that can really either set the right tone for a relationship. Because, if you share, it's about finding common ground as well, right?
Yeah.
to just finding commonalities and really connecting. Like you say, people like to do business with people they know, like, and trust. So I guess we are at that stage over here where perhaps trust and credibility is not yet being built, but we're just getting to know the other person, getting to perhaps like them. And if done right, then that kind of motivates you to want to see them again. It motivates you to also probably connect with them at a social level, because you're meeting each other, in the chapter meetings as well every week. So when you've done a game with somebody, you just connect with them better. And if that's not done, so from your experience, Prem, have there been instances where you might have done one-to-ones with members, and you might not necessarily, and then when I say you, I don't necessarily mean you as in Prem, but it's either party, but the effort in really covering the gains has not been put in, and as a result, you found that this hasn't really gone far, and then later on, when you revisited and you probably said, okay, let's do a gains. We haven't done a gains. We've met each other once, but let's do a gains. And you found that, hold on, actually, I didn't even know these things about this person, and that's just helped you in getting a different or a better start with that particular person. Have you got
The amount of times it's happened, oh my God. Because what happens is people don't really put in that effort on that second sheet. And I find out about things about them later, and I'm like, oh, I had no idea. And I mean, this could be about just the sort of networks we talk about, the sort of schooling, so on and so forth. I've found out 4, 5 years later that a person was in the same school as me. Okay, junior to me, but they were in the same school. But now all of a sudden we could relate to each other because we came from a similar background. But I never knew about that. I just never knew, and it just takes, again, relationships to a different level, whether it be for playing poker or something like that. I just didn't know about that person unless they actually spoke about it. Going off-roading, I've realized that in BNI now, because people have shared this, right? There are people who are going out off-roading together, because otherwise they didn't have an idea. How would you know unless you actually share this?
So of course it's very powerful. So I guess that should really be the starting point. And I think what we should do in perhaps future sessions like these, that bring people on and share their ideas on how they've done gains, that would be a good starting point.
Yeah. It's
And then you
absolutely,
mentioned, yeah,
yeah,
you
absolutely.
mentioned the whole thing about contact spheres and top customers and all that. That's where the business, and that's where the meaty, juicy stuff comes out, right? So with contact spheres, what are we trying to establish exactly? Once we identify each other's contact spheres, which
Well,
direction are we going towards with that?
there's that phrase, right? Uh, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, feed him for life, right? That's how I believe on contact spheres. With contact spheres is, rather than giving that person the apple, give them the whole tree. Give them that sort of person who can give, so if I introduce a fellow member, a type of contact where that person is going to constantly give my fellow member referrals, that for me, that's the game changer. It's not a one transactional referral. It's a constant sphere. And honestly, if we can get 2 or 3 of these contact sphere contacts to each one of our fellow members, you don't even need one referral a week. You don't need to give one referral a week, because honestly, those referrals will constantly become second tier, third tier, fourth tier. They'll constantly be coming along. And for me,
Yeah.
I've realized even having those contact spheres within the chapter, again, really, really powerful. Because you have the constant stream. I've shared this with you before. I've had a couple of amazing experiences with people where we have, because when you have a contact sphere, it's a person who has the identical target market to you, okay, and who has the identical contact person. that's something that we need to understand how contact spheres are actually structured and where it's effective. Like if a person's contact in a big company should be head of HR, it doesn't matter if someone can put them in touch with the head of procurement, because that's not going to help them with the head of HR. So our actual contact sphere is identifying the people who are talking to the same people we want to be talking to, people, because that's where those relationships are coming in. This can get very confusing. I love talking about it, but identifying those right contact spheres is gold if we get it right.
So again, before going into those kind of one-to-ones, it may be useful for somebody to perhaps either attend or look up some of the training we have around understanding contact spheres and how to use them effectively, isn't it? Because I think so again, that's another core value, right?
Yes.
Learning and development. And we provide a lot of that. I think if members took some time out to do that, and then continued building the relationship, it just takes it to another level.
And BJ, this is understanding a person's contact sphere is important for a member, not only from a BNI centric point of view, because today, if say a member had an auditor as a desired contact sphere, okay, so they've got one member in their chapter who's an auditor, but they should be able to understand that outside the chapter, there is a bunch of people as well who can create opportunities for them. So that's the key part, is once you are able to self-analyze who are your ideal contact spheres, then you can actually make that grow for you outside your business, not only limited to BNI. I think that's the key part, because our training, yes, we're doing it from a BNI focus. All of these one-to-ones, we're doing from BNI focus, but it's applicable to outside BNI as well. It is powerful. People can actually, use it as their general way of doing business. I confess, with gains, because of using these gains, etc., over the years, I've realized when I'm engaging with people, I'm actually trying to find out their gains, even though they're not part of BNI. And that just creates an amazing relationship.
Yeah, you could use gains, not even for your clients, but you could use with all your relationships, including your employees as well, right? Your team members.
Yeah, absolutely.
On your recruitment, if you're doing your interviews or recruiting somebody, I think using that gain structure is really, really powerful.
Absolutely. So for me, I've been going back to this, how we would do our one-to-ones, plan our one-to-ones. The first and foremost deal breaker is a person needs to have their meeting planner ready. After they definitely need to have that ready, and then plan for your one-to-ones like you would any business meeting as such.
And the gains conversation also needs to be revisited regularly. So it's not just like doing a one-off gains conversation, because things are changing in people's lives. I've just recently taken up golf, for example. That's something which is useful for me to share with my network, right? And different things. You may take up different interests. You may join other different networks along the way. You may have certain accomplishments that have happened. So regularly updating our fellow network around that. That's really powerful. So what I'm hearing, Prem, is a one-to-one is not just a one-off. It requires regular one-to-ones. And then would it be fair to say that you may not necessarily have the same level of relationship with everybody in the chapter? And that's okay. So, with some people, you'll end up doing multiple one-to-ones, with others relatively less. And then there may be the occasional member with whom you at least have done one or two one-to-ones at the very least. But having done a one-to-one at the very least with every member is a must, right?
It is a must. And also, let's not be reactive about one-to-ones. Something what I used to do a few years ago, and it became not a joke, but I mean, they laughed about it, fellow members. I actually had fixed schedules. I had fixed slots in my work week on a Monday and on a Wednesday. When if I saw those slots empty, it would actually be my call to action would be to pick up a phone and organize a one-to-one. Otherwise sometimes you forget about doing one-to-ones until you've looked at your Palms report or whatever. But here these were 1 to 2 hour slots, which I had said, I am going to dedicate these to one-to-ones because I recognize how important it is for my business.
And that's the reason I think we came up with the whole traffic light system. It's really to provide you with a kind of a measure as to where you stand on this. And accountability comes into that as well. So what would your recommendation be in terms of how many one-to-ones on average one should attempt? Because I see members, doing 5 or 6 one-to-ones every week. And then I know there are members who struggle and they probably manage maybe 1 or 2 in a whole month. What would be a good balance? And if you can just share your experiences around that.
My balance that I found was to strive for doing 2 one-to-ones a week. That's where I found, and it's not easy because you got to have to proactively take out the time for it, drive somewhere, or someone comes in to see you. It involves some level of commuting, but I used to try and set that benchmark for myself. I'm not saying it always happened, but if you keep that benchmark, that means you're striving to do 6 to 7 one-to-ones a month. You may not reach that 6 to 7. You may end up doing 5, but that's okay, right? You're doing at least 1 one-to-one on average a week. But if you keep that benchmark of doing 7, 8, so 2 one-to-ones a week, that would be at least 8, 9 one-to-ones. And you'd get 6, 7. And I think that's a fair level to be at. But you need to set that bar. If you don't set that bar.
And talking about time, it's not just the time in the one-to-one. Like you say, there's some preparation required in advance, so that takes time. And then if it's a good one-to-one, you want some results and there's some follow-up. So you might have promised somebody something, or you might have said, right, I'm going to get back to you with this. That requires time as well. And sometimes I find, when you overdo your one-to-ones, you don't have the time to really follow back or provide that feedback that you had promised. And that can also impact, your overall credibility. So really keeping a good balance of the actual time that you spend with one-to-ones and then, pre and post of that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
The last thing I have, so you mentioned 4 different things, in the one-to-one as you start and deepen the relationship. So after contact spheres, the last thing that you mentioned was, sharing each other's top 10 customers or clients.
The last 10
clients. Help? Yeah, sorry.
The last 10 clients, that's, I've seen this happen so many times. We've talked about contact spheres, which are the people who basically the tree for you or learning how to fish. But with clients, by adding that extra layer of saying, these are the type of clients that I have. Now, please, we have to be respectful of our fellow members here. I have shared those clients and I've seen members abuse that in the sense that they've said, oh, I'd like to get into this client. I'd like to get into this client. I'd like to get into this client. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of it is to share. When I'm showing my client list, I'm sharing it with you. I'm saying these are the type of clients I service. And that gives you an idea of which of the similar clients you can refer to me. The mutual respect needs to be there that, yes, when I am comfortable, I will put you in touch with those clients. So there has to be a certain level of, so I actually went through this once with someone who requested a one-to-one for me, and they did everything correctly, but when it came to the last 10 clients, I think their eyes popped open, and all of a sudden it was all about me, myself, and I, when that person only says, can you get me into this person? Can you get me? And I was like, okay, something just changed over here. So we have to be respectful of the people I've been doing one-to-ones with. They have to be able to trust you, to be able to open up their entire client book to you and refer. Yes, there will be times they can refer you to a lot of their clients, but we have to be sensitive. We have to be sensitive to how each other are. I think that's quite important. I mean, I don't want to throw a negative into this, but it's just we have to be sensitive about each other's client privacy. And yes, because I am sharing those client details, which perhaps many times a lot of members will not feel comfortable doing, or maybe because of the nature of their business, they shouldn't be able to do it. We have to be respectful of that.
So I guess if somebody follow the structure where they may not necessarily share that right up front in the first one-to-one, and they'll leave it till perhaps maybe a third or a fourth one-to-one, depending on how comfortable they are. Then you minimize that risk, isn't it?
Absolutely,
It's
yeah, you're right.
you're trying to do all of those things, because I know those are worksheets which are part of the one-to-one workshop. But sharing everything and opening the whole book straight up may sometimes be detrimental. Um, Excellent. I think this has been really, really useful, Prem. Thank you so much. I know there'll be questions perhaps from audience. So one of the things that we're looking to do is a series of workshops where we can, share some of the things that you already mentioned in detail, probably share examples of, good gain sheets that we've seen.
Yeah,
Really, get people to take time and also allow them to perhaps work on their templates during these workshops. So I guess we could do a number of different things, and that will also suit different members, because one of the things I realize is, especially for our senior members, we need to get them back in to and re-engage them in this whole relationship building process. Um, and I think doing that will really add value. What other things have you heard from the ground which members would love to see? Because I think we can make 2022 align with our theme of better together, and really
yeah.
get all of our members really to see the value of what the system has to offer them. One-to-ones are just one tool,
Yeah.
but what are you seeing from the ground, and what can we plan out for this year? What would you think would be some great ideas?
You see, I think people miss training actually. Unfortunately, these last 18 months has had our hands tied in terms of putting in together these one-to-one workshops, just generally workshops, these training workshops, because that was an opportunity for people to network and to learn, whether a newer member, a more mature member. The day you stop learning, this day you stop growing. And if you are attending these workshops, you always learn that extra 10%, which makes you a better individual, a better member. And you were talking about the one-to-ones, BJ. I've seen some amazing gains profiles, etc. out there. It's embarrassed me about mine, because some people have really gone out there and created some amazing, very informative, meeting planners where you're really interested in showing, reading those. So I think if we assist people in setting up what should be the format of having these one-to-ones. I don't think it can be a one-off session. I think it has to be a series of sessions where we impart a bit of information and there's a call to action for them to come back in the next training session. This could be something short, doesn't have to be too long, but something that people will actually learn from it.
Fantastic. Well, you know what? I think there's so much more that we can share with our members, but I'm sure this has been really, really valuable. I also learned a few things in this conversation with you, as much as we have such a long relation with each other. And I perhaps we need to do a revisit, our gains with each other. We haven't
Absolutely.
done that in a
Always a
while.
pleasure. Yeah.
So let's do that. But you know what? Watch this space, members, because this is just part one. In the next blog, what we're actually going to share are some of the examples that Prem has spoken about. Some examples that we've seen of some fantastic gain sheets, and really to guide you of what you can do and how you can also do the same in really amplifying your visibility out there with members. And then, of course, we'll be announcing a series of different workshops, which will be open to all of our members. And depending on what stage you're in, you're most welcome to join in. And we really look forward to having 2022 the year where everything comes together. The last 2 years have been, tricky in so many different ways. But I think 2022 can be the year where we bring it all together and really help you take your business to another level. Prem, thank you so much once again. Really appreciate your
Thank
support
you.
as always. And we look forward to the next session.
Thank you for having me on here. Good to talk about one-to-ones.